We're not ASMRing it today. Oh my goodness. Let's see if the image is okay. Yeah, that'll work. Doing close today. Ooh, piece of glass. It's funny how there's little pieces of glass. Funny, funny, funny. Okay. Yeah, so... Oh, did I bring my pliers? Shoot. Oops. I didn't bring the pliers. Oh. I keep forgetting to use them at home, and then they go into I forget to put them in the bag. Well, let's see how the flow is today. Probably slow, but you know. Kind of starts out fast and goes slow. Oh, whatever. Anyway, whatever. Super slow. Damn. Come on. Yeah. It's dripping out a bit. I don't like that. Okay. Okay. So usually, quite lately, what I've been doing is I've been pouring my water in, and just keeping it quiet so you can hear the birds and insects and whatever. But I'm trying to work something through about stuff. So I thought I'd do a water walk and see if I can work it out. So today I think is like a notebook version. It's not a finished bunch of concepts or thoughts. It's just like points. It has to do with the connection between pathogens, pandemics, disease, what have you, and the rise of authoritarian social structures, we'll say, regimes, whatever you want to put it, right? I mean, that connection seems clear to me, right? And the people I've been listening to this last maybe 5 years that are in the public eye are Jonathan Haidt and Jordan Peterson. They've both been talking about this. Very interesting stuff. And they both speak on it really eloquently. It's beautiful. So, here are the pieces. We've got a connection between the rise of pathogens and authoritarian social structures. So, and then, just to add to another person, yesterday I watched a chat with Jordan Peterson and I think it's Dr. Randy Thornhill, who's been doing this a long time, like 30 years, like exploring this deeply. Anyway, actually Peterson's doing a long time too. But he made a connection between the Spanish flu and the rise of fascist governing in Italy, Italy and Germany specifically, right? But that's who they were focusing on. But to my mind, it's not just there, right? Like it's very easy to point, and it's often pointed out that in the U.S. there was actually a fair bit of support for what was going on in Germany in the 30s, right? A more extreme right-wing fascist type of thing, right? They actually had a lot of support, and yeah. And it's well known that different companies like IBM and stuff were involved in the Nazi and probably Italian fascist regimes. I mean, that probably changed at some point in the Second World War, just because it became a war, right? And but anyway, so those are the two obvious: Italy, Germany. But that sort of attraction to extreme right-wing authoritarianism was probably a much wider thing going on. So, but also there were people countering it, right? It's so freaking, in my head it's just like a million thoughts going on at once. It's hard for me to put it together. Okay, so we've got that thing between authoritarianism and disease. And then, okay, see, this is a mess, right? It's going to be a train wreck, just to warn you. So then, okay, well, what about the rise of Stalinism and the Spanish flu and the Bolsheviks and all that? Because, you know, Stalin, he had more time to do his work, but you could argue he killed a lot more people than Nazi Germany. Hey, let's not get into that. Whatever. But that brings us to today, right? Because there is a bit of a pathogen floating around. But here's the thing. And there's an authoritarian kind of thing emerging, right? There's people for quite a long time thinking lockdowns are great. What is it? Like they did a survey and something like 20% of the British people think that a permanent curfew of 10 p.m. would be a great idea. I'm like, holy jeez. I mean, think on that, eh? 20%. Anyway, whatever. But what's happening now is that it's really the left, the hard left, we'll say. It's not the centrists and whatever, right? Or I just don't know. Left and right probably isn't a good term to use anymore, right? Because you could say like Trudeau is like a liberal, right? That's sort of like centrist, really. And yet he's been sort of spouting that sort of Build Back Better, the Great Reset kind of stuff that's coming out of Davos, right? And like, it's not just me, but to me that's like, what the hell? Like all that Davos bunch? Yeah, no thanks. I wouldn't trust that bunch for a second. Anyway, so, you see, that's what I mean, it's the train wreck of a conversation. Anyway, it's not a conversation, it's just me talking. Okay, so, why is it that the hard left is doing that? Like, in other times, it seemed more like more right-wing thinking, more, people with less trade openness were more conservative and more, don't change, I don't want anything new. Whereas people on the left, whatever, tend to not go that way. Like, more people from all over. I want to see more things. We can learn from other people. We can learn from other thoughts. And yet, like, I think of Canada a lot because that's where I'm from, right? And I've been watching it and just watching the kind of pretty, at times, severe lockdowns. And, you know, we could look at Australia and the UK, too. So why is it? And I got kind of like, boom, a little boom, just a little one, yesterday when Dr. Thornhill was saying he thinks that it's because, maybe he thinks perhaps it could be in part that when this pandemic thing started, Trump in the US, Trump was in power. And at first, Trump was like, don't worry about it. It's just this flu, you know, I don't know. It's not, I wouldn't worry about it kind of stuff, right? And turns out it was more than just the regular flu, right? You can argue to what degree, right? Because there's another thing popping up. Okay, put that to the side. There's just, I got the thing on my computer. It's a new paper from the Center for Disease Control saying that they're going to remove, Jesus Christ, they're going to remove the emergency use authorizations of the PCR test. Now, I've been chastising people getting vaccine for not knowing that the vaccines only have an EUA, for whatever it's worth. Maybe it doesn't matter. I think it matters, but maybe it doesn't. So I've been sort of saying, what do you mean you don't know? And I had no idea that the PCR tests also have an EUA on them. I'm like, what the hell? Because there's been a lot of talk about those tests, right? About how, you know, when they're testing for COVID, the cycle threshold, I think it's called, was really high. I don't know what the number is, like 40 or something. So that it was, everything would end up being positive, right? So that you hear these stories of kids, you know, dipping their test thing in a can of Coke and it comes out positive, so they get a few days off school. You know, those guys should get A marks, right? So they're chemists in the making. Anyway, shoot, I slipped over to the PCR thing. Anyway, the gist, let me finish with that. The gist of it is, it's looking, and there's a Chris Martinson's got a video out there I have to watch it still, and to me, he's a pretty reliable source of someone that looks into it. You know what I mean? And is willing to admit when he sort of didn't get something right, all that you like, that I like. That the PCR tests, it might be looking like they weren't ever able to differentiate between COVID and the regular flu, right? Which might account for the fact that almost everywhere in the world there was no flu cases last year. It's like, oh God. Do you know what I mean? Like, just think of the ramifications of that. It's like, okay, they don't shut down full economies for the flu. That just doesn't happen, right? Even the severe ones, like, I don't know, Hong Kong flu, whatever. Anyway, that's a whole other can of worms. But let's get back to authoritarian and the left. So, Dr. Thornhill, he thinks that because the pushback against Trump was so huge, the hatred of Trump was so huge, he was evil, he was a fascist government in the making, and you just saw it everywhere, right? It was just pure dogma and rhetoric, to my mind, right? And my favorite thing back in the early Trump years was like, okay, so what are some things that you like that he's done, right? And it's just nothing. I mean, it's like, well, what about he signed into action a bill to do something that Canada's doing, which is looking into the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, which is happening in the States too. It's a thing, apparently, and in Canada has been looked into for a while now. It's a serious issue, right? Also, I didn't need to adjust my water. That's great. I won't do that anymore. The flow is coming. So anyway, so people were so hated of Trump that it didn't matter what he said, right? So Trump signed in this thing for Indigenous women, and it was really fun to say, well, did you not think that was a good idea? And then, of course, it's always like, well, it's like, just making a point, right? Anyway, just making a point. So, Dr. Thornhill's point was that because Trump was against all this harder reaction to the Bush 19, therefore, if you're one of the goodies, right? You're the righteous, purity ones. Then whatever Trump was against, we must be for. Therefore, let's lock everyone down, which has never been done for a pandemic, right? Apparently, this is more or less the first time across the board, and it ended up being across the world, right? And it seemed to have happened in 2 or 3, 4 weeks. The whole world just went boom. In different, maybe in Wuhan they were welding doors shut, right? And in Canada it was like you could go out for an hour to walk your dog. In Thailand, it was like, it's Thailand, right? It was like, yeah, maybe you should stay home if you can. And if you have to go out, okay, well, you got to do what you got to do. Let's try to keep a distance. For a while there, they shut restaurants down twice. And a lot of it, they've not allowed alcohol in restaurants. So they're doing something, right? But more or less, like gyms are open here in Chiang Mai, not in Bangkok. Anyway, whatever. You could just go on and on. So the different countries had a different implementation, but they still thought we have to lock down. Right? The mentality was there. And also, this is Asia. This is not the West. And in this talk, I'm not talking about Thailand here. I'm talking about Canada, U.S., Britain, Europe, that bunch, right? Because those are the woke bunch, right? The woke, whatever. Is that even something worth talking about now? Is all coming out of there, especially the English language, right? English language countries. Best water in the world. I wonder what kind of little microbes and stuff are in this. There's a... I've heard... This kind of talk doesn't fly very well these days, right? Because everything's so mechanistic, really. But I've heard people talk about living water, right? Like this is living water, right? It falls down, perhaps in rain, perhaps it comes from other sources. But it goes down through the rocks and everything. It comes up from the ground. It's more or less pure. I've been drinking it for 5.5 years, say. And I'm okay. But the point that these people make is that it's like water that has life in it, right? Whereas most water that people drink, like if you're in Toronto or wherever, you can drink the water out of the tap, no problem. But it's chlorinated, right? It's like maybe not living water. It'll keep you alive, but maybe it doesn't enhance. Who knows? That's way too nebulous, right, to actually nail down. But just a thought. Okay. Give a little back to the earth. Even though there's plenty of freaking water right now. Okay, so how about this? I'm gonna pack up my pack basket and I'll continue this thought. See if I can get anywhere. Okay, here we go. Continuing this train wreck of a thinking through. Maybe it's not such a train wreck, I don't know. Anyway, for sure, anyone watching this, please feel free to comment any thoughts. And I mean, please don't give me freaking links to Bouja that, oh, it's just for animals. Oh, look how bad it is. We use it for our cattle, whatever. I don't want to hear it. I can't be bothered. Anyway, so maybe don't do that. Do it somewhere else. Anyway, so why is it that all the lefties, like all my artist friends in Canada, they're like, oh, you need to get the vaccine. They're all like, it's weird to me. It's so, oh geez, hang on a sec. This is, okay, that's better. I had a buckle digging into my lower back, but that's not that comfortable. As it turns out, let's adjust this. Okay, so, yeah, so, you know, and again, talking about Canada mostly, and States too, it's like, oh, I got my Veed, and you know, probably, yeah, yay. It's like, okay, well, you know, do what you need to do, right? But everything is best. Generally speaking, that's how I go. Even I thought, I had some friends that were older, maybe not in the best physical condition, maybe really fat. I thought, yeah, you know, the vaccine might be a good idea, right? Because you could easily say this thing is a disease is like an obesity disease. As much as, anyway, whatever. So even and I'm deeply suspicious of not fully tested treatment of drugs, right? I don't know why anyone wouldn't be, but even I thought, okay, well, I can see that in that context, maybe it's a good idea. Do you know what I mean? But not for, anyway, get into kids and stuff. And I have one friend that says, oh, vaccinating, doing I use the word vaccine, I'm gonna get fucking, I'm definitely gonna get shut down now. Anyway. That vaccinating kids is evil, is straightly how he put it. And yeah, maybe it, anyway, so we've got this, the lefties, the ones that, I don't know, like for me it's like, oh, all the artists, but it's because I'm an artist, and I have a lot of the people I'm connected with on social media are artists, so that's what I'm seeing, right? So it's my little bubble. Anyway, I like just doing that, right? And I'm going, wow, that's so weird, right? Like, for a long time I thought, wow, you know, like 2 or 3 years ago, most of these people would have said, oh, big pharma, they're like evil incarnate, right? You could easily have that conversation with anyone. All of a sudden it's like, they're the saviors. I'm like, well, that's a flip-flop if there ever was one. Anyway, so it's the left. What does that mean? Does it matter if it's the hard left or the hard right or whatever, what word you want to use? That leads to an authoritarian structure. Probably doesn't really matter, right? It all ends up being the same thing. But so what like Haidt and Peterson and other people, what happens is with the outbreaks of diseases and pathogens and stuff, is this disgust mechanism starts to take place, right? And so many people have said it's the disgust mechanism that allowed Hitler, in part, okay, to rise so well, because that's inherent in us as humans, right? So it's well known that Hitler talked about Jews and gypsies and homosexuals and whatnot as vermin, right? They use these terms vermin and stuff, right? So here's a little jump, maybe. For me, what's been going on the last year and a half is this cultivation of fear, right? So fear's not really disgust, right? It's like, why is everyone so afraid? I mean, none of us get out alive, right? You think you're not going to die? Anyway, see, there's so many side trails to this, right? Then there's this thing about, in the West, there's this fear of death and stuff, right? It's really profound kind of denial of death, to think that we can somehow avoid it. You know, and I don't want to say it's different here. It is different here, but it's, these things, we're all human, right? And they overlap. But it does seem to be a little bit, in countries that maybe have to deal with, aren't so technologically advanced. Although Thailand is extremely technologically advanced in many ways, right? Like the subway system. It's not called subways in Bangkok, but the subway system in Bangkok makes Toronto look like freaking backwater. Anyway, but still, in tropical areas, things like diseases and you see the trouble I'm having? Anyway, so there's this kind of overarching, it's like, death, no, I don't want to hear that in the West. So there's that in there. But if this last year and a half has been a lot of fear, right? But fear isn't quite the same thing as the disgust mechanism that seemed to be used in fascist governments, say, during the Second World War. To such great effect, I say. People just went, yeah, disease. They're dirty. Those other people, they're dirty, kind of thing. However, so there's the fear, right? It's like, and in Kendo we have this this idea of shikai, which is like sometimes it's translated as the 4 prohibitions, right? It's like fear, confusion. I should know them off by heart. Fear, confusion, fear, confusion. Oh shit! I'm really exposing myself here. Anyway, this is not on my head. Anyway, so these all these things we have to consider in order to practice kendo, because there's these innate, instinctual things that happen. And in kendo, it really comes to the fore, because kendo's like in kendo we fight full on, right? And people of all ages, sexes, whatever. You know what I mean? We all try our hardest. Okay, I'm saying we fight, but kendo's about self-development, development of character and stuff. But we're protected, and we use our weapons in such a way that we can give our all. Let's just put it that way. We can give everything we have into it, right? Obviously, if I'm practicing with a 10-year-old, it's going to be, or an 80-year-old, it's going to be different than with someone who's 30, right? But anyway, so fear, right? We need to sort of keep a handle on the fear thing. But what seems to be merging, and this is where it gets really, really disturbing to me, is that what this is merging into now is a disgust mechanism, right? So we're starting to see people talk about, like, I know one person that said people that aren't V'd should be denied all hospital access, period, no matter what. It's like, whoa, that goes against the Hippocratic Oath. Of course, this person's not a doctor, so you get these little snippets out, and this fellow, Devin Thompson, great name, what a really great piece. You know what? I'll link it. I'll link it below on the Facebook anyway version of this. I did a beautiful piece actually. I pointed this out, right? So we're starting to see. I mean, straight out in France, Macron has said you can't basically do anything without a certificate, right? They're not mandating getting V'd. They're just saying if you aren't, you can't do anything. You know, from going to restaurants, cafes, movie theaters, maybe shopping. I don't know, can't remember the specifics. But this is serious. Mind you, it is France, and somehow Macron forgot. Silly little boy. The France is the place of the French Revolution. And the French ain't taking none of this shit. Or so it seems. So there's been lots of protests there. I mean, come on. That yellow shirt protest, what was it? Like a big protest because the gas prices went up a little bit? This thing's could just make everything go up. Anyway, so we're going to see this interesting push and pull, I think, over the next while. Right? As the governments try to initiate this sort of one, really a monolithic perspective of how we can fix things, right? I like what Pierre Corey has to say, actually. I like a lot of what he has to say. But he suggested, look, and actually Brett Weinstein, actually, maybe it was Brett Weinstein that said this, but like, you know, it's perfectly, so this is a little bit treacherous right now, it's slippery and steep. I said, you know, this could be like a three-pronged kind of situation, right? People that are higher risk or just want to be V'd can do so, no problem, right? Good for them. People that have had the disease already, it looks like their immune system, whatever, antibodies and stuff seem even better than the vaccine, some people are thinking. But we'll see, right? It's like the Wild West of whatever. So maybe, and then there's the people that aren't so easy with the untested vaccines, unfully tested vaccines, or V's. Might as well just use the words now. And have chosen to do something like, you know, take care of their health. There's always that. Perhaps go on some sort of preventative, like like bujatin, etc., etc. Right? So there could be a three-pronged thing, and we could snip this in the bud. But generally speaking, for most of the countries, it's a one-shot deal, as it were. So, right. So it's this shift into the disgust mechanism that seems extremely worrying to me. And it's expanding. You know, it's started out small. Now a lot of people are freaking saying it. And you know, I've had loads of sort of scraps online about it. I kind of enjoy it, right? Like I like getting into fights. But usually I don't usually get into it on the V's or anything. I usually just get into it on my own pet interest, which is is the Bujabujitin. Yeah. I like the Bujabujitin. Comes from the earth. Yeah, did you know that? Comes from Omura, I forget his name, a Japanese scientist, discovered it in the earth near a golf course, in a golf course near Tokyo. Won the Nobel Prize. No, won the Nobel. Let's be clear here. Won the Nobel Prize for the incredible help it's given to as an antiparasitic, you know. And yeah. But of course, basically the proof of that is that it's very safe. That doesn't prove it's a good as an antiviral, even a focused antiviral. Although it does seem to work that way. But nonetheless, it's the safety is confirmed, right? So that's out of the way, which is good, you know. So this disgust thing coming up. But there's pushback too, right? Like I've just read, is it Air Canada? Or maybe it's the Toronto airport? Anyway, something to do with, they were having separate lines for the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, right? Like, and either they decided on their own or there was enough pressure for them to go, no, this isn't right, you know, this isn't right. So that's, see, even in Canada, there's these really positive things emerging, right? Canada's no different than anywhere else. It's just that's because it's where I'm from. A lot of Canadians I know are just following in line. Majority, you know. But nonetheless, there's plenty that aren't, right? There's plenty that are just want to question, want to look carefully. That's the best we can do right now, you know, is look carefully, to my mind. Holy crap. That's enough of this. I'm going to show you what I'm looking at right now. There's a little trail. Isn't that something, eh? My God. I wonder if that's enough for today, eh? There's also things I want to touch on. This is probably going to go on for a while, this internal dialogue that I happen to throw onto YouTube. But there's a number of people I know that have been active in the climate, environmental, you know, social media world, say, are also very much the monolithic view of how to deal with this disease thing, right? And it's an authoritarian perspective. And that makes me go, okay, oh geez, right, okay. So for me, see, my main motivation in life, really, it has been since I was really young. Like, for sure since I was in my mid-teens, and probably before, just it became more focused, more seen, is, as a modern human, how do we find a deeper path to the wild, natural world, right? How do we get it so that we don't even need the word nature? You know what I mean? It's kind of an impossible task, but I think a worthwhile one. So when I see this stuff about you have to do this, you have to take the V, you have to do this, you have to get your 3rd shot, you have to lock down, you must do this. I think, oh, you probably think that to mitigate climate, you have to do this, you have to do what we tell you, right? To my mind, no. That's not gonna work. First of all, humans don't like that. They actually don't like being told what to do, right? I'm sure most of you have a sense of that already. They just don't like it. They'll put up with it for a while and then they'll go, screw you. You know? Sometimes it takes a long time. Decades even. But eventually they go, enough of this crap. Anyway, so that is an antithetical, is that the word? To finding a way through this modern industrial way, right? So for me, this is my opinion, my thoughts, the only way we can do it is find a deeper connection with nature. To understand that we're natural beings, right? We actually do. We deserve, in my opinion, we deserve to be here just as much as the ant over there or the bird singing, right? We're beings in nature. The issue could be, and seems to be, that it's so out of balance, right? So always in nature, if an imbalance happens, then things go awry, we'll say, right? So it seems obvious that with the human situation now, whether it's climate change, habitat loss, everything, it's way out of balance, right? So how do you get around that? There's no solution, I think. There's just trying to find a way through, and hopefully it picks its way down to some sort of balance. It probably won't happen in my life or your life, but maybe down the road, you know, it will. And maybe it will happen through things we do, but maybe it won't actually. For sure, like a lot of the people I'm seeing, whatever, lockdown, are the same ones that are like, we have to have more wind turbines and more solar panels. That'll fix it. It's like, no, that's an industrial solution to an industrial problem, right? It might help, but I don't see a solution in it, right? It could also be that the only way through this is for things to just break down. Do you know what I mean? I hate to say it, but that's another possibility, right? It's another possibility that the only chance we have is everything to collapse, as though it were an imbalance in nature, as though it were, the simplest one I always think of is the lynx and the snowshoe hare, right? Snowshoe hare population collapses, because that's what's very clear pattern, right? Then the lynx just die like flies, right? Because they don't have anything to eat. So that's a possibility, but that, I don't feel like, I don't feel hopeless at all, right? Because I take every step forward thinking, okay, that you need to know that that's where this could go. And maybe that's the only way and the right way, who knows, right? But that doesn't mean that we can't try to find a way through it, right? Maybe it can work. And also, just the act of doing it is something that can help us stay sane within this thing, you know? I don't know. How's that sound? It's something about the absolute blind faith in Western... this is really tricky, right? People are going to hate this one, but whatever. The doctors know. Have faith, you know, it's just have faith in science, you know? I trust in science. It's like, no, you don't. That's a faith-based thing, right? I'm really very respectful of faiths, actually. And I have my own structure I do. But science process, man. Science is wrong all the time, right? People that make these are wrong all the time. They've screwed up big time, right? So, I don't know. What am I trying to say? I just see now. I'm really in a. I'm dammed up now. I don't know where to go. So maybe we should leave this here. I'll do what I usually say. It's like, oh, try and get out in the sun if you can. It's pretty clear that vitamin D helps, even though in like wherever the West, they're like, no, vitamin D won't help your COVID or whatever. It's like, oh, Jesus. Here in the Nation, one of the English language papers, online papers in Thailand, there's a whole article about how important vitamin D is. Wow. Just that little bit, right? Makes me go, okay, glad to be here. It's not perfect here, right? It's complicated. People are afraid like everywhere else and stuff. But just that alone, right? Okay, there's someone saying, okay, yeah, getting out in the sun is actually a good thing, right? So get out in the sun. I think getting out in the forest, or back where I used to live in Alberta and Saskatchewan, out in the Great Plains, it's amazing. You can find inner health and inner peace and maybe a perspective on what's going on. And if you have a perspective, please let me know. I could use the assistance. Anyway, let's leave it at that. This is really long, this thing. Yeah, okay, à la prochaine. See you on the flip side. Yay, French. Okay, so, oh God, I can't believe I did this. You know, when I was doing the water walk, I was, oh, where'd my pliers go? I wonder where my pliers were, right? So I must have used them at home and forgot. Hey, สวัสดีค่ะสบายดีไหมคะสบายดีดีใช่ Anyway, because on the last one I shut the valve off using the pliers, right? I was going to do that today, it's a little slow. But then I was just walking, just saw one of my neighbors, and I shut the valve off and didn't turn it back on. It's like, oh God, that's so bad, right? And I was wondering why the flow was really slow last week. Anyway, of course I just like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that, and trying to say all that in Thai and everything. Anyway, so Pisu Tam's nephew, I think? It's his house, and Pisu Tam was there too. So we were talking, and I said, oh, I just like, I'm just crushed. That you don't. Anyway, maybe don't need to explain how. You just don't do shit like that. Anyway, so from now on, I'm not going to bring the pliers. Just not going to bring them. Or if I bring them, I'm not going to use them. They're so, I just apologize like a million times. Sorry, anyway. They're so nice about it. It's like, no problem, no problem. It's like, yeah, maybe no problem one time, but it's going to be a problem if I do it again, is what I think. So I'm not going to do it ever again. You know what? If the flow is slow, I'll just wait. I got patience. I'll just wait. That's how it's going to be. Lesson deeply learned. Okay, so I don't usually do walks through the village, but here I'm. Oh, สวัสดีค่ะสบายดีไหมทำอะไรคะ
บ้านให้ chicken
oh chicken ไก่ cool
ที่แม่แกะตะกี้ไม่ไหนไม้อะ
ดีมาก
เข้าทรงท่านได้ทรงนี้อ่ะต้องฟีดท่านเหรอ
โอเคเราพบกันไหม
จ้า
Yeah, so anyway, just making up a little chicken, what do you call that? Chicken cage or something. Anyway, so basically everyone from where I was there down to my place had reduced water flow. It's not the whole village, right? This is just this section. Had reduced water flow for a few days, until someone sort of probably went up the trail, see what the hell's going on, and saw the pliers sitting by the valve and checked it, and boom. Okay. Well, it's not the first time I've stumbled on, done something not wrong. But luckily I don't do it all that often, so that's good, I guess. And won't do that ever again, is my plan. Okay. Anyway, off I go. Beautiful, it's turning out really beautiful. Look at the sun. And get my vitamin D now. Ciao.